9:31.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
And Connie's reviewed it to the phone.
You are a good man. You just raised 10 points on my
Every once in a
scale.
while it happens.
All right, we're principally going to go on today, but we have some outstanding issues that hopefully we can resolve before then. I had hopes that we were able to deal with the conflict issue between plans and code, and I think we made some progress, but there's a couple of things that just came up within the past 2 days that I'd like a little bit more time to investigate, and Mr. Wheeler is apparently hunting. Till Monday. Okay, he's my main contact point on it. So I think generally we're going to be going with the Wheeler language, but there may be some slight modifications and further discussion. So that one, unfortunately, is going to probably have to continue a little longer. I've also been mulling over, if you remember, we deferred the discussion on the UDC responsibilities from Chapter 2, and we thought, oh, we'll deal with that later. Well, we haven't found a good place to deal with it later. So what I'm going to suggest, unless the committee opposes... Coffee! No. What I'm going to suggest is that we go with the format that anything relating to a land use decision goes to P&Z, issues relating to design go to UDC, which is basically the tenor of what P&Z proposed. Well, is there objection to that? Okay. The other thing that was on that leftover list were the industrial use tables. And as promised, I sat down, well, I didn't sit down, over the phone I sat down with Jennifer. We were both sitting. And what we did is, there's a sheet that says at the top Johnston Oceander of the tables. And what we did was we looked at what P&Z recommended, and we looked at the provisionally adopted, and we looked at the staff recommended changes based on the conversation with the mayor. And as typical, we didn't go with any of them, but we went our own way. But I think a lot of it is sort of in the tenor of what we've done in the past, is to find middle ground. So what you can see handwritten there is what Jennifer and I are recommending.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, what document are you referring to?
It's a handout. Remember we handed out those blank ones?
I think this is it, but I didn't hear about maybe what you, Jennifer.
This one's different from yours because they've got P and C up here. That's what she's talking about.
They're on
Can I
the
please
table
have a
here.
copy of it?
Yeah, they're right there. Harriet, I thought there wouldn't be enough time to do in committee line by line on the table. So what we did in order to save time on committee is go through and do a potential suggested version. And if you like, we can say it's fine right now, or you can wait and have more time and look through it and see if there's anything in it you object to.
Well, since we were supposed to compare it to the P&Z table of allowed uses, now it's different. I think we need more time.
No, what you got in that handout is, well, yeah, that's right, to the P&Z uses. I'm sorry, you're right.
Right.
Okay, well then why don't we, you can look at what Jennifer and I did, and hopefully at the very beginning of next meeting, if there's any specific objections to it, you can say so.
Okay.
And probably it'd be easy if any objections anybody has, they email committee. Just so
We could do that, yeah.
we
Or-
can handle a lot of it before we.
Yeah, or also, I'd be happy to explain the rationale for some of the changes if you want to talk.
Okay.
But I just didn't want to eat up committee time going through 50 uses.
Right. Okay.
Okay? All right. The other issue that we had waited on was the R4, R4A. And there were some questions and concerns, and we'd ask for Bruce to get together with Tom, but Jennifer, you want to go ahead and talk about that?
Just, I mean, and I was one that was sort of holding out on all the mixed use, and because of Tim sort of coming in with his thoughts and actually sort of some of the stuff even that Bruce was saying, I got feeling that the residential, high-density residential is a different animal than some of the other districts. And it was my understanding is the R4A would just be a tool in the box for mixed use. And it would be one that would be in place by staff around high transportation corridors. So it would make sense to have a more commercial, retail, whatever use. It wouldn't negate having mixed use in R4. It just would be a R4 mixed use on steroids. Is that correct?
That's essentially correct. It would only be used in certain few locations, and it would allow some commercial use in the industry for the R4A.
And it would be, you still would be able to have mixed use with the language current. I think the planning and zoning has language for mixed use that we spent quite a bit of time discussing for R4, correct?
Yes, they had language for mixed use in the R4, which was taken primarily from the R4A. It's provisionally adopted. The R4 does allow mixed use, but limited.
But you were saying that actually the R4A had allowed for more mixed use than the language that they put in for the R4 at one point.
The language they put in for R4 allows the same amount of the project in terms of its floor area percentage to be commercial, as did the provisionally adopted R4A. But in terms of use, it's in the Chapter 5 use table where one can see the full extent of allowed commercial uses that the Commission recommended for the R4. In Chapter 4, it looks like, when one reads it, the blue line version, that there's a very limited range of commercial uses allowed in the Commission's R4 district. It's when we get to the table in Chapter 5 where we actually see the full range of commercial uses that would be permitted in the mixed-use development.
So, and you were going to discuss with Bruce sort of the whole concept of the mixed use going from a high-density residential and how it applies to R4. And what came out of that conversation?
It didn't work as well as we'd hoped, as I'd hoped.
We agreed that, as I took the conversation on the R4 itself, we agreed that the range of commercial uses should be limited, and I think the range of commercial uses that both provisionally adopted and what the Commission shows in Chapter 4, essentially the same range of uses. So that in the R4 it remains a primarily residential district, although it allows a bit of commercial with that. That's where the agreement sort of ends, and where we agreed that the R4 should have a limited percent space commercial and a limited range of commercial. And then we turned to the R4A tool, which allows deliberately far greater range. That's where we couldn't come to yes.
As I say, I've
That's
kind of
discussed.
flip-flopped on this, and I can see where high-density residential is different than our other zoning, commercial particularly. And I would be open to the tool of R4A, not only for something that would be no cost to a developer to implement if it was on one of the areas that had a high public transportation, high, a transportation corridor, but also as a tool that a developer could use where if the developer saw that it organically that would be a good place to have a better mixed use, because I'm sorry, I don't always trust any of us as far as planning out what we feel the city's going to look like. Sometimes nature takes a turn, and sometimes it's far better done by the market than us. But so I'd like the tool, and so I've taken a flip.
Okay, I guess I'm with her, so my fit sense is maybe to go with staff on that and retain the R4 and the R4A, unless there's some objection.
I would just like
Go ahead,
to
Tim.
take 30 seconds to reemphasize that after really looking at it and looking at what the true difference from a locational standpoint of what R4 is and what R4A is, as proposed by staff, I really feel that we need to have the R4A as proposed with locational requirements for where it goes, because the current R4 that you may not ever be able to rezone to anything else is in large part not in the locations that you would want to have the mixed use components.
Yeah.
And to not split it takes away the ability to locate it in exactly the right places.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you gave a convincing point. Changed my position.
I drafted some draft locational criteria, and I printed them, and I think they're on my
We're going to
printer
just
somewhere.
leave it at that right now, okay?
We're lost electronic space.
Okay. All right. The other remaining things were Chapter 8 issues. Do you want to start, or I guess we could start with what is on the pile there, if that's all right?
Small lot subdivision development?
Yeah.
Okay.
This one, do you want to talk about it real briefly? This is issue, what issue, 8? Hold on. Remember, there was a discussion for narrow, small lots like townhouses, and staff had some real concerns about it. So then we talked about, well, allowing it with certain conditions. And we tasked Mr. Potter with helping us come up with the conditions. And then I even put pressure on him, and he came through. So I thank you, Mr. Potter. But apparently this is your work?
That is a combination of Connie Oshimura's work and my work.
Very good.
I created this out of the notes that she and I made out of a couple of discussions and meetings.
Okay.
And effectively what it does is give you some criteria for identifying that if you're going to go the small lot subdivision approach, that it's going to be done as a conditional use,
Okay.
which means it goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission for an evaluation. The public, the neighbors, everybody gets to see what it's going to be. Has a submittal requirements where you show what the existing topography is, the aerial photo to see what's going on. You supply a detailed grading plan, drainage plan, utilities, driveways, parking, pedestrian circulation and improvements. You show where the subdivision lots are, show that pictorially. You would include proposed building elevations so that you can actually see the type of product and the finishes that you're going to have. And would require that there be 4 or 5 different building facades, so there is a diversity and mixture of buildings, so they look different, and a minimum of 2 roof styles. There'd be a requirement that there be a homeowners association document, CCRs, which include a requirement for architectural review committee, and it would have those guidelines incorporated into that material, so the public and P&Z and the staff could look at that and evaluate it. And that would have to be recorded as part of the subdivision and conditional use. The P&Z would be looking for enhanced landscaping, snow storage, and guest parking as special consideration. Now, getting to the standards, the minimum lot size, this is where you depart a little bit to try and establish what the minimum lot size, rather than just saying 2,500 square feet or 3,000 square feet. You'd actually go to the building footprint and then take the minimum setbacks that are within that zoning district adjacent to that, and they would be the fire setbacks at a minimum. Then required yard setbacks, you'd see front yard 20 feet. If you propose to put your garages so that they enter parallel to the street, you can actually move the structure to within 10 feet of the right-of-way. The rear yard is 10 feet, except that where you're on a public alley, the structure can be on the property line. And then side yard is required to meet the fire code minimum of 10-foot separation between structures. And the side yard setback could be used as a driveway, like they did in the old subdivision days, where you had a garage partly tucked around the back of the house, and you drove up the side lots, and often the neighbors shared the driveway. And the lot coverage, if you have a two-story structure, gets 40% lot coverage. So that also gets to what the minimum lot size is. And then if it's a one-story ranch structure, you get 50% lot coverage.
Okay. And this is back issue 8.11 from the staff, if you're trying to follow on it, where we talked about exempting small lots from the minimum width to depth. Staff, any comments?
It looks fine. I think it needs one additional thing, and I think it, under the standards, we would accept the ordinance as being okay, but you need some, when you're creating these small lot sizes, very small, you're going to need some kind of usable open area, and I would suggest some usable common area, size and location determined by the subdivision design and by the approving authority.
Okay. Tim, you have any comment on that?
I think that that's appropriate. Connie and I did chat about that, and I actually did put that in. We felt it could be less than what a PUD has as 30% open space, but there should be some.
Okay. Is there objection? Oh, Erica?
I just wanted to ask if you discussed height, because in districts where you can have 3 stories, these are kind of end up being tall.
I would think it would be the height of the district that are surrounding,
You could end up with some tall, large buildings very
which
close to each other.
would be problematic, I would think. Jim?
Then under lot coverage, maybe it's just really multi-story structures is 40% as opposed to two-story structure.
True.
Okay, but with the height limitations of the surrounding, is that problematic, Erica?
Well, I mean, as written, I think you
Are you
use
worried
that
about
under-
R4 and that you might have an 8-story stick-built,
No.
400 square foot
No,
footprint?
Probably a
just think that when
3-story.
you have these buildings so close together and they're 3 stories, you're going to be creating these tall buildings that are very close to each other, and I just wanted to see whether they thought about
Oh,
that issue.
But if you go to cities on the East Coast, where you have, buildings that have been there for 200, 300, 400 years, and we call them tract buildings at this point, but Georgetown or in Philadelphia or Boston, and they act 4 stories, and because they're all within the same,
The difference is they're attached most of the time.
yeah.
but some aren't. I mean, there are, but I can visualize some that have a very narrow. So I mean, it's.
They often have a more urban environment, though, than probably where this type
Dick?
of development. So I just wanted
Yeah,
to-
no,
I
I'm
just wanted to bring
just
Okay.
trying to,
Because one way to
visualize.
approach this is what's been done in the PUDs, and that is that there's a requirement that if it's a 2-story building, it's a 10-foot fire separation between the structures. And when you go to more than that, then there's an additional offset distance. And I think we can just lift that from the underlying
Okay.
PUD
All right.
standards.
Frankly, my thinking of this was the little bungalow concept, so,
And that's probably what's going to happen.
yeah.
The
Dick, did you,
birdhouse.
yeah.
Tim, quick question. Did you guys look at having parks in these planned developments so they got someplace for the kids to go and play? Because there's not that much of a yard left.
There's not going to be that much of a yard left. There should be some play area. But Connie and I even talked about that there should be a sliding scale.
That's what I'd like to
That
see,
if you're
sliding scale.
adjacent to an existing school
But if you're
or an
not-
existing park, then you're on the lower end of the scale of park and open space that you have to provide separately. If you don't have one of those types of land uses next to you, then it should be towards the upper end of that scale.
And it also is going to be dependent on bedroom count, in my opinion. If you have one bedroom or two bedroom units, you're not going to have you shouldn't have probably as much requirement for open space. So that gets back to the submittal of the design of the property itself, the structure itself.
Yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit because we're going to talk about private open space a
How
little
about
bit
color
later
on
on.
these? Is that going to be up in your review committee? Because I remember in Eagle River, we had a problem in your neck of the woods. Are we going to have colors set by this board so people don't end up having an odd color house they have to repaint?
Well, if the homeowner covenants,
I think
That didn't work too well for you
If you buy
guys,
into
did it?
that situation, then that's your deal. If that is the development standard for that specific development, and the architectural review committee and the guidelines say that it's going to be a certain palette of colors, and you can't live with that,
Yeah.
then don't buy into that.
read your covenants before you buy a house. Yeah,
The covenant's not enforceable by the city.
I know.
You lived through that, didn't you?
I did. Go ahead,
But
Connie.
if I could say something, Southport is a pretty good example of covenants that are enforced through a homeowners association and a fine process within that homeowners association, where they actually use the property.
Also, individual homeowners can enforce covenants against other homeowners and recover their actual insurance fees.
Okay. All right. Generally, we're going to go with this. We will look for you to add some type of language to open space, which we are going to review later on. Okay. Tom just left. Sharon, you're here.
Okay.
Can we had talked about the vehicular routes on steep slopes, and we tasked you to work with Mr. Ferguson. Did you have a chance to talk to him, Jim?
We did. We met.
Okay.
We're going to need two things here.
Okay.
We met on Tuesday afternoon with Dave Grenier, Steve Schrader, Jim Ferguson, Connie, myself. and
This is
Don.
8.9 issue, if you're trying to follow. Go ahead, Sharon.
And our job was to come back with some language that everyone could live with on the steep roadways crossing steep slopes.
Okay.
And we got that language back from Dave last night about 4 o'clock, and just this morning I noticed that it had been sent to the wrong speed by accident on email. So Steve Schrader just got it about 10 after 9 this morning. So you've got two things in front of you. One is correction with the yellow and red that says including, and the other is is Steve Schrader's additional things, which I don't think anyone will have any major heartburn with. But in terms of administrating it from his world of PM&E, he felt the shalls and the maybes are important. So that's what you've got. Basically, what came out of our discussion was that when we wrote the previous language, we really hadn't had a discussion about utility easements, and we really hadn't at the forefront talked about the way that you revegetate stripped areas. And two things on utility easements, which are normally on the hillside, but they could be the cut side, are required by most utilities to be in they want a flat base to be doing their utility work. They don't like to be putting in their work across, in a slope area. And so they have been holding pretty tight to that. And so it seemed reasonable to accommodate that situation. So also the other thing that came up is that you can't plant trees over utility easements, or it's very much frowned upon. And also within the right-of-way, in terms of requiring vegetation of trees and whatnot within the right-of-way is a problem, because that requires municipality or whomever's in charge of maintaining that particular right-of-way with maintaining the trees. Tree dies, you have to replant it. What's the situation there? Plus, they need a lot of that space for snow storage and whatnot. So, what we came up with was that
Abbreviated version, Sharon, if you
abbreviated
can.
version is that you have your right-of-way. You can disturb the right-of-way. The original language remains. The first is clear your road areas, and if you get good material that'll stand up at a steeper back slope than 2-to-1, great. Take advantage of it. Have less disturbance. But so that language stays. So you can disturb your right-of-way. You can disturb your utility easement in addition to the right-of-way, and then the maximum disturbance either edge of the right-of-way would be 25 feet. That gives you some limit. And then once you disturb, let's presume you did have to disturb 100 feet of width, well, we'll get to width in a minute. The area that's outside the utility easement, outside of the right-of-way, should be revegetated with vertical stuff. Native, I believe the language that ended up in here was native trees and shrubs, alders, whatever, you know, the hillside likes to grow on itself. So that would be revegetated. That was the best
Okay,
shot at minimizing the scarring.
are you okay with this?
So I'm okay with this, with the correction.
Jim, you okay with this?
And then the
Okay.
shalls and shall be's and mays
Okay,
just got handed to me.
we're,
so-
we're not, and right now, we're not dealing with specific language, we're dealing with concepts, and we're
Okay.
referring to staff. Is the committee okay with this?
We're
Any
okay.
objection? Go forth and prosper, thank you. Would you remind Mr. Kiefer that he was going to come up with a... Oh,
You can remind Mr. Kiefer, ma'am.
thank you. I was just looking back at 8, and on that private streets issue, I thought I remembered that you were going to come up with an additional definition of private streets. 'cause
Right, I did. I turned that
You
in.
did?
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't seen it, but I'm assuming that we'll cover that. Okay,
We'll get it to you.
all right,
Do you
thank
need me
you.
for anything else?
No, thank you very much. Tom, what else do we have left in 8? I think that takes care of 8-9, 8-11, we've done 8-14, we've done 8-16. I think we've done 8 now.
We've done 8.1, of course, is related to the
And
comprehensive
8.1
plan,
is-
so that's-
Yeah, the big elephant in the room.
Big kahuna.
The big kahuna, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna put 8 away. Anything else? Can we move to 7 now, Tom?
I don't have anything else to do.
Okay, very cool. All right. All right, back to purpose statements. In this case, I think P&Z went too far because you took them all. So what I'm going to ask is, this is going to be one that I'm going to ask to come back. Tell us which ones particularly bug you, but you can't, we need something. So what I'm going to ask is if we defer this one, and I'm going to look at somebody who's willing to look in more detail at this and maybe take out a couple, but not wholesale destruction, all right? Is that all right with the committee? Okay, let's move on. Alternative equivalent compliance 7.2. I talked to Tom yesterday and I told him I had to read this like 3 times because basically the issue and the response, and you agree or you don't object, but the part you do object to is adding landscaping, screening, and fencing into this.
Correct. We have no objections to the other amendments
other part.
proposed by the commission to that section.
So, what I talked to Tom about was particularly screening is going to be problematic. If we were talking about the dumpster situation, and if we do, I mean, we've got multiple approaches to dumpsters before us. We've got grandfather them, we've got amortize them, we've got screen them now. And however we approach that, in some situations, we know that existent dumpsters are going to have some real significant challenges. So it was my thinking that if there's any additional flexibility on screening that's possible, it would be a really helpful thing to do. So when I talked to Tom, I said, well, okay, if you take out landscaping and fencing, how about leaving screening? Did you have a chance to think about that, Tom? Or?
We did, and we talked briefly among ourselves about basically what the provisionally adopted rewrite provides for the owner of a sixplex or a fourplex apartment building that's existing, there's really no place to put the dumpster because of the way the site was developed. And for that, the provisionally adopted rewrite has a special process on page 74, beginning on lines 34, called an administrative variance for refuse receptacle location. So what we looked at was alternative equivalent compliance, which is a discretionary design review process by the administrative reviewers that could create an equally effective design solution for locating a dumpster or screening a dumpster that works on the site as is required by the letter of the law. So alternative equivalent compliance could be an alternative creative design route. The difference between that and the variance, the administrative variance, is basically the variance allows for less. The variance allows less. It's basically a process by which the applicant can demonstrate, look, I can't meet this standard.
Yeah, understood.
But the alternative equivalent compliance doesn't allow for less. Alternative equivalent compliance, the key word there is equivalent. So
Yeah.
it's really not a safety valve or escape route as much as the administrative variance. So we looked at those and said, you can do that, and I don't think it'd be the end of the world. It's just the administrative variance we think would actually be the one that allows
But there's time and money involved with the variance, and with this, there wouldn't be. Right? I mean,
That's exactly
they,
time.
yeah, how would that work?
okay, well, hold on a minute. Does somebody from P&Z want to explain why you included this section in alternative equivalent compliance? What was the rationale? Do you remember, Sally?
Well, I think exactly what you're saying is both the time and the cost of getting a variance. And then in the landscaping, of course, the entire section was redone based on the recommendations from the landscape architects, plural, that we dealt with. And in there was alternative equivalent compliance mixed on a separate table in the landscaping section.
Okay, well, I missed that then. I guess I just assumed that
Well, there is a
landscaping was
table
fairly
that-
straightforward.
That addresses the alternative equivalent compliance in the landscaping part. And then on screening, specifically what you were just saying was one of the commission's concerns, which was the time and cost associated with getting a variance, especially on some of the existing fourplexes,
Okay,
sixplexes.
all right. Why do you object to this for landscaping then, since there's already a table for it?
The table is this, this is the equivalency table. The applicant doesn't want to go through alternative equivalent compliance to get this table. This table provides enough information for by right approval. And what we do in most of the sections, obviously the rewrite's rewritten a lot of sections of the code. Where more flexibility is needed, we provide menu choices, like this point systems. We provide flexibility within the section that allows the applicant and the front counter reviewer to get to approval without having to go through a discretionary design review. The other thing about the discretionary design review is that it is more time consuming, and it also is dependent upon guidelines as to really what is appropriate.
Wait a minute, by discretionary design approval, you mean the alternative equivalent?
Yes, I'm sorry,
Okay.
yeah.
Right,
And that's a more intensive process. And
For staff.
We strongly recommend that we use it for what it was designed for, the building design.
Okay, hold on a second. So when you were looking at that landscaping section, did you look at it as that table was a by right choice? Do you remember?
We didn't know how it would be treated.
Okay.
I think if there's enough detail in it, maybe Terry can address it.
Yeah, Terry?
Fundamentally, what that was about was that in our review and our exercises of trying to use the matrix, we rarely came up with the same numbers. So the notion that was that didn't end up with a discretionary thing. In other words, you virtually always ended up in a situation where you had to negotiate because people didn't come up with the same quantities every time. So unlike our current one, which gives a specific number of plant materials and so forth, that's easy to sit down and calculate. The menu approach was a much more difficult way to actually get to an end count. So what we were proposing is really a by right alternative compliance to address exactly the flexibility issues that in most cases there isn't a need to address that. Most property owners say we're just going to get the landscaping done and we're going to meet those requirements. But there are cases in our community, lots of cases where there's a need to address alternate compliance. And so what we prepared was a by right way for you to say, I'm going to skip that. I'm going to put myself into the position of negotiating with the planning department for an alternative.
Okay, so it wouldn't need, the way you guys put this together, it wouldn't need this other process because it's already laid out.
That would be correct.
Okay. And you're basically saying that the screening one is maybe a little help, but the variance would be a lot better. What about the cost and time
The cost is
discussion?
$600, Debbie, and we haven't worked out the procedures, but it can be done at the counter,
For the variance?
administrative. We haven't codified it yet, so we don't, we haven't put any parameters on notice requirements, so, but administrative variance in that particular instant could be done at the counter.
Okay. Any last comments from PNC?
If it can be done at the counter timely, we have no objection. If you go the variance route now, the applicant has a great deal of cost that the city doesn't see. All the city looks is the fees. I mean, there's a lot of money there. And so
Yeah.
it's got to be clear that it can be done at the counter in a timely manner, or you want to stick with our language.
Yeah, it's hard to define timely.
I know. Time is a nice word, but it means different things to developers versus administrative process.
Timely to us is 14 days.
Well,
Alternative equipment compliance, if I may,
Please, Tom.
is like a variance in that it's a discretionary review process. Either route the applicant takes, they're faced with a greater degree of review and negotiation than it would be if they just took it to the front counter person. We don't have alternative equipment compliance today, so we don't know what the cost to the muni would be to administer that, but all we know is that the variance administrative and alternative equipment compliance are each in their own way a discretionary process.
okay. All right, since it's still, I think that we should personally go with what they're saying at this point, unless there's some objection, go with staff on this. And that is to not include the landscaping, screening, and fencing. Thank you. Any objection? And the rationale being that apparently the variance process will do more at a relatively quick and relatively cheap. And I see the skepticism all over Mr. Ferguson's face, but at this point, we don't even know how the alternative equivalent compliance is going to work. And it could very well be that takes a long time too.
I guess the only thing that, just listening to this back and forth and listening to this conversation is you're putting a choice out there to the developer. They could go down one of these roads, and as they get defined, I'm sure we'll find out which road is more effective than the other. I just...
Well, and frankly, part of my rationale is it's going to take writing another section if we put screening in. So I'm being bad.
You like your screening, don't you?
I want to get done.
Yeah.
Okay, so you would like to keep screening, is what you're saying, at least, or not?
Well, I'm just, what I'm hearing is staff doesn't even know the difference, and actually when you bring up the time part of writing another section, it does scare me. But which would be more effective, which is the most timely, which is...
Okay, can I hold on? If anybody else in the committee wants to comment before Erica? right, go ahead.
I think we do know the difference. The alternative equivalent compliance is proposed for either 30 or 40 days. I don't remember exactly which, but it's supposed to be equally effective to the standard, whereas the variance process
Can be less.
Can be less.
No,
Yeah, no, and I
that's
understand.
been said.
I understand that, yeah, no, I
That's been
understand
said.
that part.
All right, well, tell me what you want, committee. Do you, Harriet?
It sounds like we're moving towards agreeing with the staff recommendation.
Well, that's where I am, but Jennifer's expressing some question about it, so I want to know where everybody else is.
I'm fine with the staff recommendations.
Dick?
I'd just like to get timely defined, because if you're talking 30 to 40 days,
Okay, well, there
you're
is.
talking timely at what? 14. We need an alternative, because we're talking about real time, real money for developers.
We can live with 14 days. We can put that in there.
Hold on a second here.
Sold.
Just to
14
clarify
days.
what we're talking about, the
Okay.
30 days that
Is-
Erica referred to is the
current-
alternative equivalent compliance.
It's
not the
already in there.
administrative variance.
I know.
Okay, so the
Let's
variance,
shorten it down.
If it's an issue, we can pare that down to 14 days.
Let's pare it down.
Jennifer, will that take care of you?
Good.
Okay, any more comments on this?
Madam Chair, I'm
Yes.
just not clear where,
All right,
where
so
14 days is going in.
Right now, in the alternative equivalent compliance section, it says there's 30 days, right? And so the suggestion is to make it 14 days, but also to eliminate the section on landscaping, fencing, and screening. Yes?
As provisionally adopted, the AEC was, should a decision not be rendered within 40 days, the commission brought that down to 30 days.
And you agreed with it?
I have no objection to 30 days. Alternative equivalence compliance is a design review.
You're not sure if you can do it in 2 weeks, is what you're
I'm
saying?
not sure. I don't know how.
Adequate staff in the department, 14 days can be turned around.
All right, I'm listening to the head of the department, so we're doing that. Is there objection to that?
Okay, so on page
Harriet.
7 of this document,
Yes.
the last paragraph, you're amending line 17, page 3, from 40 days to 14 days, according to the department chair. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's-
And then we're accepting the recommendations of staff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes? Yes? Okay, moving on. Okay, now, I'm hearing fundamentally different things here on this wetlands permitting. You apparently believe it's going to be really problematic to do them both simultaneously, the feds and here.
Do them simultaneously?
Well, isn't the recommendation,
Apply and do them simultaneously is fine. It's the final approval. We have a wetlands expert here.
I couldn't hear that.
well,
I'm
we're
sorry.
trying, just a minute, there's nothing to hear yet. Go ahead.
It has been proven problematic in the past in final approvals for a wetlands permit. It happens, and then all of a sudden, the planning action happens. They can be different requirements, different conditions on
Okay,
both.
project, if-
Conflict. And so
Okay.
the processes are, they're fine to continue at the same speed, but it's the final action that really can be an issue.
Okay, did you hear that, Jim?
We don't have a problem with some mechanism for reconciliation, and we understand that. But they need to proceed simultaneously with some mechanism at the end for reconciliation between the two approvals.
What's your name, I'm sorry?
Karen?
Karen? Could you either talk louder or stand up? Sorry, you're soft-spoken. Can you talk about his reconciliation process? Is that, what happens now, and is that doable?
If there are conditions imposed by the Corps of Engineers for a wetlands permit, for instance, like for setbacks, and then the plating actions have to reflect those, the back and forth between parties in rectifying that can be problematic for developers, we've been told. So just trying to find a common ground where, again, both processes can proceed at the same time, that's fine, but making sure that those final actions are cohesive with each other.
Okay, hold on a minute, Erica. Jim, what's the problem here? It
Well-
sounds like it's working.
Well, no, because if I have to go get a federal permit first and then go to the city, and these things are 60 days maybe or longer, quite a bit longer. And so take 60 days and then 60 days and it's a head to tail and head to tail, whereas if they run concurrent with reconciliation and the developer's caught between two governmental bodies
Okay,
that don't really want to, I mean,
okay. Is there a problem asking Karen, Erica?
Well, I just wanted to clarify the process just because I've been involved in this from the beginning.
Okay,
So, and
quickly.
Karen will correct me if I'm wrong. What we're proposing is you apply for your federal permit, you apply for your plat, you get your federal approval, then you get your plat approval. So the things happen simultaneously, but that would be the order of approvals, because if you get your plat approval and then your federal approval puts conditions that make you have to change your plat, you have to go back to the plating board to change your plat.
Okay, Karen, you agree? All right, Tim?
I think traditionally, and maybe there's been other issues, but the way that it's traditionally worked is that you would go for your core permit, you do your plat, and you get your preliminary plat approval. And the plating board or the plating authority, in that case, if it's the Planning and Zoning Commission, can adopt a condition of approval that says you can't record your final plat until you get your core permit. And it's subject to all the conditions of that permit.
Okay,
So that allows you to go through your preliminary plat process, resolve all your other conditions of approval, work your core permit, and then you have to incorporate. That's where the reconciliation happens. All those items in the core permit, because the federal requirements kind of trump the local requirements if they're required more setbacks or other mitigation. You modify that on your final Mylar, and then that gets submitted to the city for recording. So what's going to happen is that you're going to see a preliminary plat and a core permit go in. You're going to see a preliminary plat approval going through the public process. It'll have a list of conditions of approval, one being subject to getting your core permit. Then the core permit's going to take 6, 9, 12 months. And at that point, you're going to know what you have. You put that into your final plat with notes and/or dedications on the plat, whatever the resolution is. And then once you have that done, you can record your plat. So,
okay, I thought I understood this. Obviously, it's more complex.
Well, there's 2 steps to a plat.
All right.
There's preliminary plat
Preliminary and
approval,
final
then
plat. Okay, so what you're proposing, what somebody's proposing.
We are all in agreement.
is-
Get your back
We are
your
all in
way.
agreement.
Okay, I'm confused again. Please tell me why that doesn't work, what they propose. I don't get it.
It's extremely close. We're just trying to find a means to facilitate both of these processes so that there isn't that back and forth of potentially conflicting.
Well, the note from staff is to reject P&Z on this. But it sounds like you're saying you don't reject
Yeah.
P&Z on this. So I need,
Just the sequencing of final approvals from the feds and PC.
What you're saying would happen.
okay,
It's now.
you
This
guys,
is the process that's done now, and this process works.
okay. I don't understand why there's a rejection recommended on this. I'm sorry. I'm missing something, obviously. We lost Jerry.
Your summary says, staff summary says, the proposed changes P&Z recommends
I know
allow
what,
the P&Z actions to occur
sure.
first.
I know,
If
but
condition.
what she's saying is a little bit different from what I understood. Jerry, we need help. Basically, I'm not hearing an objection to what P&Z is proposing from staff, but yet there's a rejection recommendation here. This is number 3. I don't know what I'm missing.
Well, my understanding is P&Z changed it to allow the application to come before the wetlands permit. We talked about it internally about doing it simultaneously as an alternative. If they, do it simultaneously, that would be acceptable.
Okay, I thought that's what you recommended.
It is.
Okay. So you don't object to P and Zs? Okay. All right, and I couldn't find this technical edit, but if it's a technical edit, then I'm
I don't
sure.
know, Jerry, he didn't hear the end of the conversation perhaps, which was the final order of approval, because that's what I heard from staff. They were concerned about this final order of approval.
They seem to be saying the same thing.
That's what I thought, but Karen, is there anything further on the final order of approval that you want to talk about right now? Okay. Is there anything on the final order of approval that you want to talk about right now?
No, I think it's really not rocket science, and the system actually does work, and there may be some back and forth that I haven't experienced before, but
Okay.
we've always had to incorporate whatever was in the final Corps of Engineers permit
Okay.
into the final plat, and then that gets recorded.
Just a quick analysis, the Corps basically is objected to the past. They're saying if you go ahead and let the commissions or boards approve these things, that we're bound by what they decide. But we know that, they still do what they have to do in relation to the wetlands, that they have to evaluate the project and the merits.
Well,
So
when the-
no final approval can be given until they get incorporated.
Right. So you can
Okay.
have preliminary approval. It's
Okay.
subject to getting your Corps permit.
Right.
If the Corps permit isn't granted, and it says no, then
You got to.
your approval is null and void.
I got it.
You can't do it.
Okay. Well, okay. I guess that one turned easy for
I think
us.
this is an easy one.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going with P and Z
Yes.
on this one, and they'll just take the risk that they'll get all those approvals and then have to reverse it all if the Corps of Engineers doesn't agree.
Yeah.
That's, as I understand, that's it, yeah. Okay. Okay, there's all this on stream setbacks, but basically you're recommending the same thing P and Z's recommending.
No, correct. This is reporting on the issue that garnered the most public comment during the public hearing process.
Okay.
And we're just reporting it to you that the recommendations there at the bottom of the page, I think, are all
Okay.
in sync.
Thank you. Well, I'm comfortable to stay with P and Z and the mayor's recommendation, which is current, okay?
Got a hand down there, Debbie.
A hand down. Yes, go ahead, Nancy.
Yes, I'd like to comment that the Hillside District Plan specifically adopted a 50-foot horizontal setback above from ordinary high water on the streams.
Okay, let me ask to Jerry how that would be implemented then. You'd have a conflict between
You'd have a
code and
conflict,
plan.
and with Dennis's most recent interpretation, that is that the adoption of the new code would prevail.
Okay. Nancy, just real quick, last
Yeah,
comment.
it says in here that the Hillside District Plan says that the municipality will write ordinances or policy updates as necessary to formalize these standards. So it is anticipated that the municipality will adopt standards to implement it. And it's not a huge area, it's the area.
No, we
above
know,
the-
we know, thank you.
So-
We are still working through the issue on relationship of plan and code. We've got a preliminary language from the municipal attorney, and I'm sure you can get that from, I don't know if it's on the table there, but it's a held issue that keeps generating comment. So you've given us another example of an issue like that, so thank you.
Just as an FYI, we have identified some of those outlying areas of the community, not that are urban streams, that perhaps in situational, there's a lot of municipal land adjacent to it, or large lots, that we will be going back to look at this particular section.
Okay. All right, moving on.
Are we accepting the recommendations at the bottom of page 9?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. The next one is issue 7.5.
Yes, this is when we re-engineer and recreate a natural stream, and sent to you, and I hopefully handed out today is a visual example of just such a project.
Yeah, brief,
And
Tom.
There it is, 100 feet. It allows a viable stream function within that corridor. It's
Okay.
different from a stream setback.
Yeah, if you redo a stream bed, the suggestion is to go from the 50 feet to 100 feet or vice versa. Planning and zoning, why did you recommend that it go down to 50?
Continuity, and we felt that 100 feet would be an impediment to redoing the stream.
Continuity to what, Jim?
Say again?
Continuity to what?
Well, the other setback was 50 feet, and this setback should be 50 feet.
Again, it's
7.4.
it's apples and oranges.
Because this is a re-channeled stream.
That's right. This is
Okay.
this is the channel through which the stream is meandering. And it's,
Okay,
can't
yeah.
get a meander in less than
We
100
understand.
feet.
All right. Discussion from anybody else? The example that you showed, is that Chester Creek?
Yes, Chester Creek rolled in, so just under the side of the road, the old green house.
Is anybody familiar with any examples where it took less? Because it appeared to take the whole 100 feet on Chester Creek, at least according to that map. And if that's the case, I think we should stick with 100 feet. Objection?
No.
Okay, moving on.
So,
Weak slope.
Madam Chair, if you clarify, at the bottom of page 10, do we accept the staff recommendation?
Yes. All right, the next one is the steep slope. And there's a bunch to this. So I think we're gonna have to go step by step on
Step by
it.
step.
Yeah.
So does everybody have a copy of the Blue Line version? You follow through?
Okay, this is on section, what page are we on here, Tom? Do you remember?
It starts in 11, and on line 14, it's subsection of natural resource, it's steep slope
Okay.
development standards.
All right, the first thing you objected to was reduction of those two purpose statements, E and F.
That's
And-
right. the
And I
reference
generally,
to F.
yeah, I generally recommend, unless the committee objects, is keep E and get rid of F. Does anybody care? Besides that, okay? All right. The next one you objected to was the change of 20 feet to 30 feet? Percent, pardon me. Thank you, Erica. I recommend staying with a 20% because there's already a section on steep slope 30% later on. Is that okay? All right. The next one is the site disturbance envelope on page 12. And on this one, I recommend staying with the current and not P&Z on the 70%. So basically keep the blue line crossed out. Is that okay? Any objection?
Keep
Keep. Staff, go with staff. Okay? And the next one, the toe of the slope, top of page 13.
You skipped temporary construction.
I skipped what?
Temporary construction fencing.
Oh. Staff says that flagging would do it if you don't want the fencing. I want something. And if flagging is okay, then flagging will do it, but we need something. Okay? On 13, the toe should be 15 feet. I agree with that. Is there any objection? Okay. On the raising and lowering of the natural grade, I agree with P&Z. This is any point, and at some point, I think you would have to go up higher. So I'd say go with 10 feet. Any objection? Okay, the next one is retaining walls.
We've already come over to.
We already addressed retaining walls, didn't we? Okay. Ground cover revegetation, page 14.
You already addressed, or we already addressed.
We already said that you can have a higher retaining wall if it's engineered. I remember that,
That was
didn't we?
in, yeah, we did that in chapter,
Well, I generally think
Right.
you can have a higher retaining
Yeah.
wall if it's engineered. Is there any objection to that?
the language was provided to us by, didn't you provide language?
I don't remember language. I just remember saying it.
Yeah.
I've got to, when
Tim?
you get done with that issue, I'd like to go back to.
Go back, go do it now.
I'm reading the site disturbance envelope. And where the blue language is, the size of the site disturbance envelope, this is under C2.
Yeah, I see it, go.
Shall be no less than 70% of the lot area? Is that,
Well, we
should it?
We
I'm
didn't
trying to figure
agree.
out, it seems like the site disturbance area, if you're actually trying to keep something and limit the amount of clearance, that
Yeah.
you're not saying no less than
But
70%?
Tim, our position was we were not going with P and Z. We're going to go with the provisional language in that
Okay.
section. So it doesn't matter.
I'll figure it out about retaining walls. So figure out what you do.
Okay, generally the intent is if it's engineered, it can go higher. Okay? You want to say something, Rich?
Anything over 4 feet requires a permit, and we'll get a review anyways.
Oh, will it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. The vegetation on 14? Pansy, why did you get rid of prior to November 1st on the vegetation? That seemed to make sense to me. This is page 14, lines 20 through 23.
Well, I think it's required to revegetate by the SWEP right now.
So why
What happens
object?
if you're working in the winter?
What happens?
SWEP dictates that you revegetate anyway. Yeah, within 14 days, so I think our land,
Okay. So you got rid of it because you thought it was redundant?
yes.
All right, staff, why did you object?
This is correct code language from the R10 district, and it's to make sure that slopes in the winter are stable.
No, I think the purpose is agreed on. I don't know anybody who objects to having the revegetation, but their point being, is there anybody here who's knowledgeable enough on
If
SWEP?
they're not revegetated by the 1st of November, it's not going to take that year, obviously, so we had to have some threshold as to what the cutoff time might be.
Madam Chair.
Wait, hold on, he confused me. Can I get clarification on that?
Yeah, this whole thing is pretty sensitive.
But the SWIP covers it as well in some instances. But
Okay,
in
so-
other developments, this is current code, and this is what most people are familiar with. This is the latest time to do your vegetation.
Okay, Ms. Foles?
Yeah, the current code was written before the state of Alaska took over the...
Okay, has it proven problematic to have
No,
this
because,
language?
like they brought out, before you can get winter shut down or anything like that on your project, all that has to be in
Okay.
place and inspected.
All right, if it has not been problematic, I'd say just leave it then. Okay, why did you get rid of the building design standards? Was that one of your points? I don't remember if it was. Was it?
Where are we? Yeah.
Okay, why did you eliminate the building design standards from this section? Do you remember? Sorry, put you on the spot.
Who was the question addressed to?
P and Z, whoever wants to jump in. The rationale for deletion of lines 24 through 32 on page 14 is what?
Well, all buildings and structures shall have a foundation which is designed by a professional engineer, architect, or other qualified professional. That's covered elsewhere in the code.
Right.
So why do we have it here?
Well, I think the intent would, I don't know, that the architect would be aware that this is on an extreme slope. I don't know.
An architect better be aware.
Okay,
He's got the site plan.
All right, go ahead, let it finish. Go ahead, Jim.
And so, we didn't know, I and little, I mean, I is required elsewhere, and why are we saying the height of the structure shall not exceed 25 feet above the original grade? If you got a two-story house, you can easily exceed 25 feet above the original grade.
Okay, and your objection to this deletion is what?
First of all, single-family homes are not required to be designed by architects. So,
Okay.
here we're talking about steeply sloped areas where the, the foundation is going to be significant. And then we are trying to implement the comp plan direction to design the development to fit in with the topography rather than the other way around.
Does this preclude a two-story house on the hillside?
No, because the height is measured as an average height, and it would not preclude a two-story height.
Okay, Mr. Bowles?
If you look at double I there, it says any given point of height of the structure, so that includes the ridge, not the midpoint of the roof.
So you think it does preclude a two-story?
You'd have to redesign the roof on your house.
We look at the language.
Okay, I don't think there's any desire to preclude two-story houses.
We'll look at the language.
All right, Connie?
An architect will add $20,000, an architect's stamp will add $20,000 to the price of any single-family home.
What else? This is qualified professional engineer. So right now, when you do a foundation on the hillside, what do you do?
You have a structural, you do have a structural engineer.
Well, wouldn't that be a qualified professional? Would it be? It would be.
It would be.
Okay. I think generally, as long as we're sure we keep two-story houses, I'm okay with keeping.
We'll clarify that.
All right.
So,
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So you're saying ignore the blue strikeout except for the two-story
Yes, ma'am.
piece?
Is that all right?
Yes, and then on the previous one, I'm sorry, on H, we're ignoring the blue strikeout and leaving
Yes.
it as provisionally adopted?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Did we cover everything on Tom's gone? Is there anything else on height? I think we got it all.
Now we're into
Wildlife management
laying those
corridors.
bare butter feet on those chickens.
You know, folks, we spent a whole lot of time in committee on wildlife corridors, and we vastly softened what was originally presented. So I'm inclined to go with staff on this. Would there be objection to doing that? Okay. The next one is waiving the residential open space requirement.
Yes, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends exempting multifamily developments adjacent to schools, dedicated parking from the private open space requirement.
My question to P&Z, is this one that includes schools?
Yes.
It is.
All right, I object to the schools part of it. Schools don't want adjoining people on their campus during the daytime, and frequently they post it, they don't want people on their campus at night. So parks I could maybe live with, but schools I really can't. Why did you include schools? Do you remember?
Well,
Or why did you say this? Maybe I should pose it that way.
I think the open space requirement, if you have adjacent open space to a development, can be encouraged to be utilized if you create pathways or pedestrian access to those particular areas. I can think of one school called Alpenglow where you can go there during the summertime or in the evening when you have daylight, and it is actively being used.
Okay.
Actually, and we had this discussion this weekend, and I was thinking of South Anchorage, and most all the South Anchorage schools have trails to them, and there is a lot of, the only one that came to mind was South Anchorage High School, where now we have an issue.
Oh, many issues.
So
Those hillside
I'm
people,
kind
I'll
of,
tell you.
that is a case in point that Debbie brings up, where you've got a conflict between the neighborhoods and the school district.
We did talk to the school district about this, and they objected.
I'm just, all the other schools in South Anchorage are used as community. I mean, you see pickup ball games, and you see, I mean, it's
Okay, well, my experience maybe the school district has changed a lot since I was on the board, but they didn't, I mean, they rented those fields and they could kick you out and they don't want you on there during school hours. I'm not with you on that, but
Yeah.
Tim?
I guess there's a philosophical issue here, and maybe that's what we're really talking about. Is that
Okay.
historically, schools have always been kind of a center focal point of the community and neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it seems silly to me to have a 10, 15 acre or 50 acre asset of land that's sitting there for a good amount of the year unutilized by the community, or that the school district is saying should not be utilized by the community when we all pay for it. And it should be something that is used. And we should refocus that part of the real emphasis in our community is the school. And that's where the philosophy comes from, I believe.
I share it. You know, those facilities will be used in one way or the other. People will gravitate to them however most convenient. But the open space requirements are minimal in the code here, and they're appropriate for the intensity of use, so we would recommend that they stay.
If you would take a look at page 22, there's a couple of photographs in the lower right. The function of those spaces, of the private open space requirement, is, the word private is in there for a reason. It has a different function from a public space. It's the space that's right outside your residence or in a common area in a group of residences, and it is a space that you can use to go out and have the back barbecue with your friends. It's the space where you let your kids out the back patio door. That's all this is, and it is it's minimal. It's not an increase over current code. That's a private space, and the nice thing about that for the residents, it's different from a park or school. It's the place where you have control and you know what's going on. It's a space where if you want to garden, you can garden.
Okay.
Let your kids out. A park, you can't control what goes on there. And it's a different function.
Okay, I'm generally with staff on this.
Back to schools for a second.
Go ahead, back to
I could
schools.
see when schools were in session not having it open to the public, because schools are really concerned about who's in their property.
Yeah,
The schools are in session.
yeah. Well, I think it would be a great discussion to have when we have our joint meetings with the school board. And I
See
don't
what
mind doing that.
liability
I don't mind
is
talking
also-
about it with them at all. But let's talk about, are we with staff on this or not? Harriet?
Yes, I'd like to say that I'm envisioning encroachment onto school property of barbecue grills and picnic tables and things like that. That it just doesn't make sense. And without the school district at the table, I suggest we go with the staff recommendation. Absolutely.
Objection?
I would go
Jennifer?
with your compromise.
To just take schools out and leave the rest?
I'd rather not, but I will.
Madam Chair.
Just go ahead, Harriet.
I can't envision barbecue grills encroaching on parks either. That just doesn't make sense.
There are many parks and dedicated parkland throughout the city which are not programmed or designed to handle the kind of function that private open space is intended to handle.
Tom, this is a fairly simple point, and I think that the committee can handle it without any further delineation, all right? I really do. So I'm going to limit comment on this. It's pretty simple, yes or no. I think I'm generally with staff, but Dick,
Staff.
can you live with it? All right.
I have to say one tiny thing.
No, ma'am. I'm
Please think about
sorry.
2-year-olds.
Oh, no,
We went with staff.
I know. but
Okay,
it carries
Cheryl,
on.
hold. All right. The next one is on page 19 of the blue red line. And it talks about the specifics of how big that private open space would be. And what I did was I asked staff to provide me what the current private open space requirements were. And I kind of wrote it in the margin of mine. And in some cases, this is an increase over current requirements, and in some cases, it's a lessening. And so you did it too. Okay, so I'm generally with staff on this. Comments? 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 All right, I am blazing, folks, because we're under a deadline here. Okay, private open space reduced in R2M and R3, issue 7.9.
I thought that was the decision you just made.
No, that was the 7, oh, you're right, I'm sorry. You're right, Harriet, I'm
Okay.
wrong.
R2M and R3 private open space, we're okay with the staff recommendation on page 19.
Yes.
Okay.
7.9 is our issue now.
No, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
That was 7.9.
Yeah.
I just turned the page and looked at the top of the page
I'm
and
sorry.
didn't do anything more. Good thing you're watching out for it, yeah. Okay, the R4 is the next one. 710. Page 20 on this, yes, got it. Okay. I assume you did this because you wanted consistency, P&Z, and that was the rationale, not because of a desire to increase the open space here. Okay, I'm generally with staff on this one too, unless somebody objects. Is there objection? Okay. That's 710. 711. Standards. This is page 20.
Page 22.
Yeah, but page 22 there and page 20 on the red blue line. Okay, Tom, when you say clarify the measurement of average slope, could you elaborate on that? I don't understand why you think that's necessary.
Well, where we all left off 2 or 3 years ago, we inserted the word average into the slope requirement so that it didn't read.
Yeah, if you have one little hole. I remember that discussion.
Yeah, and so the measurement challenge is what does average mean? And the average would have to be 5% or 10%, but of course it could meander. So the reason we inserted average in the committee was that understanding that some parts needed to be allowed to have more than a 5% slope.
Right.
And so that was where we left off.
So you want to add additional language to define average? Is that what you want to do?
Well, either that or explain it somewhere. So that we have clarity as to what that means.
Okay, Jim?
The length of this room is approximately 28 feet, I believe. And 5% across this room would be 16 inches. So we're talking 16 inches across this room. You give that to a toddler, they wouldn't have a problem with it.
Okay, so you're not on average now, you're on the 10 to 5%.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I'm saying,
You're the guy who's been real big on definitions for years here now.
what I'm saying is a 10% slope would be 30 inches across this room. A child can play on that. And
You
that
could
would be
use
an
the
average.
percentage on the width of the open area. I mean, you could dimensionally say 5% over 20 feet, or we could come up with some kind of standard that has, where you could actually implement it. So 5% over 20 feet.
Okay. My linear brain just got fried because I was still on the average thing and you went into the slope thing and then you responded with combining them both. And you lost me.
Let me bring some language back to you.
That would be good.
What did he say?
Can we bring language back?
Can we talk to you about it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, that hurt a little bit, but we got through it. Okay. Okay, I'm trying to find what else you objected to here.
There were a number of changes made to the the development standards for private open space. The one that concerned us primarily is in our recommendation number 2, line 18 of page 20 of the blue line. That's the proposal to allow site perimeter landscaping. Site perimeter landscaping in the parlance of the code, and whether that's changed or not, back to arterial or buffer. But basically, the essential thing is that that landscaping is that bed with the 3 shrubs and a tree with the mulch on it. It's at the edge of the site, and it's a bed designed to provide vertical visual softening or buffering.
So it's
from the
got
adjacent
shrubs
property.
in it, shrubs and trees in it.
And
Right,
it's-
Terry?
It's
Okay, so you're
private
saying-
open space is more intended to be usable to run
I can't
around.
put my barbecue because there's shrubs and trees.
You might burn your tree,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. That seems like a valid point to me, but. Okay, I'd say site perimeter should be excluded then. Anything else? Tom, go ahead.
Not on 7-Eleven.
Okay, so Harriet, we erased the line out on site perimeter.
Okay, so this is, so it stays.
Yes,
Site perimeter.
site
and
perimeter stays.
And therefore, we're accepting recommendation 2 at the bottom of page 22.
Yes. Go ahead. Anything else on that section?
Other than coming back.
Other than that whole confusing average thing? Yeah, okay.
On 7.12,
Yep.
We have our expert on the way. He'll be here at 11, so I'd request holding off on that item until he returns.
Okay.
He can explain
That's fine.
MH.
Don't worry about it. Oh, lovely snow. Okay.
Madam Chair, we can take that 5-minute break right now.
In fact, he just walked into the room. How'd you do that?
Okay, you need a break? Okay, we've been requested by committee member to do a 4-minute break. Go for it. 4-minute break.
You will get done with this, Deb, in your lifetime.
I have been. I keep hoping. But there's so much.
I know. And that's going to go to 5
Yeah, but we need to do the heavy lifting.
When you envision this going
Into November, right after budget.
approval what, December?
I hope. I want it done.
We lose.
But see, I've got to do my chapter 10 still after we do this. And my taxi cabs.
Well, tax cab's interesting. That one lady. I can drive another, I just can't drive on space. Well, guess what? Then you're back to the city limits, which you set foot off.
We need to clarify it though, because it's an increasing problem. There's bunches, and it's all the time more and more
They're
commercial
coming in from the
vehicles.
valley too.
That's what I heard.
I saw a taxi cab that said,
And that's illegal right now. Under current code, they can be cited for driving on the street.
but what's the penalty?
Well, it can be up to $1,000.
I consider driving. The second time they get on a taxi, that gets their attention when they lose their vehicle.
Well, see, I'd
They
like
make
to
their money
allow
off.
it under limited circumstances because there's more and more people that live in the valley and work in Anchorage. And we don't have any way for them to get around if they don't have a car.
So there has to be some hammer that stops people.
I don't mind a hammer if you somehow allow it under narrow parameters. And that's
I
the
can't think of anybody
hard
better specificity.
part. Well, so far I don't have it. I've got some of it, but I don't have it. So I'm trying to brainstorm how that can be defined so you can allow it. And that's what I've been working on. I met with Julia on it, and she fried me. We met at 1:30, and we finally got out there at 5. I was painful.
Yeah, no, well, it's like the ethics office, 5 pages, 55 pages by the time she's over there.
Yeah, well, she's
Now only she understands it.
I really want to get this done.
I know what you need. Everybody needs a break.
We're finally getting close, Terry.
gonna wrap this at the 12th?
I can see it just over the horizon.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm going to come back with some language on the ability to prevent a third landscaping private.
Yeah, I think the argument though of a barbecuing little shrubs is what that means.
Well, it's
Like barbecue can exist in the city park, planned by the city.
provide, it says ground cover holes, so expresses the bed as a bed, like a full farm. It can be grass all the way to the fence.
I didn't know that. Okay, so yeah, I'd be happy to.
Terry and I can come back. Good. While I was watching that.
So, I mean, that's part of our. Oh, got it.
And,
Oh, it can stop. That's great. Yeah, you think it'll go off around and you stop it. I'm trying to figure out.
I apologize.
I need you on this one, Joe. Has it been 4 minutes?
Yeah, I remember when I had mine once, and it did not have attached to it, and I had a weight keeping arrow.
Okay, let's go ahead and get back on it.
Hand on it. I had marks.
Please, please, please. All right, we are now talking about increasing the site disturbance footprint. This is issue response number 712. My concern from previous Title 21 committees, besides getting a breath, is being in accord with state guidelines. So I got conflicting statements from staff and P&Z on this. So the two people I want to hear from most are my engineer friend, Mr. Ferguson, and staff. So, Jim, you get first dibs at it.
500 feet is ridiculous by definition.
But what's the state requirement?
1 acre.
That's not correct.
Okay, you just got my problem right there.
There are two permits issued by DEC. One is a statewide permit called the Construction General Permit. It addresses construction activities statewide. That does have a 1 acre threshold. There is a separate MS4 permit which specifically speaks to our storm drain system.
Has that been signed by the city?
It's right here.
Yeah, I know, it's not right there. Has it been signed by the city? Are we committed to that plan?
This is the permit they issued it,
So it has been an issued permit?
Issued permit.
Okay.
The city is required to comply with MS4. I don't deny that. The contractor, the threshold for the contractors is 1 acre. These are apples and oranges. These are apples and oranges. It should stay at 1 acre because that's what the federal and state laws are. The city still has the obligation to comply with MS4.
So my understanding, though, based on what I was just told, is there's an overlapping requirement that we would contradict if we went to the 1 acre because there's a 500 feet. Yes?
The threshold is 10,000 square feet. So in terms of a hard threshold, it is a 10,000 square foot individually or collectively. So if a developer were to buy two 6,000 square foot properties, each one in and of themselves would not meet the 10,000 square foot regulatory threshold. But as a composite, they are over the 10,000, so it does become a regulated property. So in terms of like a absolute minimum, it's 10,000 square feet. The city is responsible for regulating those properties. So in terms of what Mr. Ferguson said, if a developer were to go on a property that was, let's say, 12,000 square feet, over the 10,000, under the acre threshold, did not do what he needed to in terms of getting coverage under state and federal standards for erosion sediment control, the city would be penalized for not regulating that property.
The city has the right either way. But we're talking about where does the contractor's obligation kick in. The city has that obligation irrespective. I mean, they've agreed to it. But it does not fall to the individual contractor, the individual space, He hits 1 acre when the state and federal laws
Actually, it does.
kick in.
That's right. We cannot issue any permits that are in conflict with the permit issued to us under this provision, so.
We are the only location that has got that interpretation that I've been able to find. I challenged staff about 6 weeks ago to conflict that. I haven't heard anything back.
Well, is it because we're the only ones with this additional permit?
In the state of Alaska, yeah, I'm not sure about Juneau, but South Central here, we are the only ones with an MS4 stormwater permit.
But Jim, if we are under this permit, we have no flexibility. I would personally prefer that we're in accord with the state. That would be my preference.
How did we agree to something more restrictive is a good question.
Yes, but it's not our question right now. I agree with you.
I mean, this is a city's requirement. They agreed to it.
It stems from the fact that we are the only, we have a it's two things. It's our population size and it's the infrastructure we have in place. There's no other area in South Central Alaska that matches our infrastructure and our population.
Okay.
That's simply where it comes from.
Mr.
And
Bull-
that's a mandated permit, essentially.
Mr. Bowles, can you further illuminate?
Well, why don't we go with the language in the permit and say 10,000 square feet?
Well, yeah, I'm not going to propose that we do something that contradicts a signed permit the city's under.
The permit says 10,000 square feet. Collectively, singularly or collectively, why not put that language here?
Jim, I appreciate your frustration, but there's no way that I think we can recommend going against a signed permit.
This is, I mean, if this language was not in there, it was not in Title 21, the city would still have the same requirement. That's correct, isn't it?
But I mean,
Okay, but
I mean, yes, you're correct. But generally, staff looks to something in Anchorage ordinance to
so there's no
have a foot to stand on when they go out and try and regulate something.
So, what he just said, the city still has an obligation whether or not it's here. This is Title 21. It's only directed at Title 21. Title 21 should look at the SWEP, which is 1 acre. The city still has a requirement. The city has 1 billion requirements to enforce that aren't in here.
Jim, we are currently wrestling as an assembly with the understanding that some members have that regulations have exceeded code. That came up with a design criteria manual discussion fairly recently. And the administration is now moving forward with the understanding that regulations have to be in some sense approved by this body. So I acknowledge and agree there have been instances in the past where regulatory authority has exceeded code. I believe that to be true. However, in this case, I believe our hands are tied.
I don't believe they are because the city, as he just said, has the same requirement whether it's here or not.
But I don't want to put, just a minute, I don't want to put a municipal employee in a place where they're going out and they're trying to enforce something and there's no reference in code anywhere that enables them to do it. I don't think that's fair to an employee. I just don't. Okay, down. I understand. Go ahead.
Just one to the point of responsibility under the requirements of the permit.
Yes.
Last fall, the city, as well as a number of individual developers, received a notice of violation from the state of Alaska on this very issue about development footprint and size and what they needed to do under the stormwater regulations. So it's not even just the city. Individual developers are being held to that 10,000 square foot threshold.
Okay. I recommend we go with what we have to do here.
Because I ask you one caveat. If this gets changed, my concern here is I'm working as hard as I can to get this changed at the MS4 level, okay?
Jim, if I am on the assembly and you change it, I will introduce an ordinance to bring it up to that change.
That's all I'm asking
You've
for.
got until April.
Of this next year.
Yeah, I understand the April very clearly. But I mean, I don't want to run into, well, it's existing code and so we're going to stay there.
Then you can go to these guys. Yeah, no, I really am sympathetic, but
Why not just add the language or as otherwise
Stated,
adopted?
yeah, we could do
Because
that.
it could go away, it could go down, a variety of
We could do
things,
that.
and at least that keeps
Yes,
you
please.
informed.
We want the language that was suggested added.
Okay.
You got that? All right, moving on.
Debbie, just one thing here. This 500 square feet cost one of my clients last year $6,000 to do a 571-foot disturbance. That's the reason why we feel so strongly on this.
Jim, when I first read this, I totally was with you. I honestly was. I thought, acre. Dang right, acre. But then I read what they said, I heard what they said, and I got to do it. Sorry.
I have no objection, by the way, to their rewording in excess of 1 acre to 1 acre or greater.
Okay, all right. Harriet, what?
So we're accepting the staff recommendation
Yes.
on page 24.
Yes, we are.
1 and 2.
1 and 2, with the caveat, they're going to add that phraseology about, or as otherwise adopted, or as otherwise, whatever that.
Those three things.
We got it.
Thank you.
So those one.
Okay. And the in excess of 1 acre is fine, though. Or the 1 acre or greater? Is that, okay.
Now we go to the fun part.
Now we go to the fun one. This one has been a killer for 6 years. It has been very, very, very difficult. And I have changed my mind about 15 times on this one. And I think I'm finally at a place to make a recommendation that will make everybody mad.
Then it must be okay.
Only someone will authorize the Eagle River Chugach be barged into you guys?
And no, this isn't an Eagle River Chugach. And I'm going to suggest we go 10% multifamily, 5% commercial. And if you've looked at this in any depth, this is going to make staff unhappy and it's going to make P&Z unhappy. But it's a definite change from where we are now.
And
Any comments, folks, or?
And Debbie and I.
I did talk to her
going
about
around in
it.
circle on this.
Yeah.
And the difference between commercial and residential is, I feel with commercial, there's much more of market-driven snow removal, just in the nature of the business, than there can be sometimes with residential. And so that was why I went with that,
This is a hard one, folks, and it's really not clear what the right answer is for me. But I appreciate all the work that was done. Staff has worked on this issue alone hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And Tom had great pictures on this. But I'm concerned about cost and impact on existing development, and even though it says new.
It says new development.
It says new, I know, it says new. And maybe you guys want to change it. My guess is this will be debated at the assembly level.
What about the parking issue? The recommendation to...
And I originally was with that one too, but
We'll increase every parking lot.
I talked to staff about that, and the traffic engineer apparently has real problems with that.
She's there.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Hey, Stephanie, I didn't see you in the back.
That's okay.
We wrestled with the economic impact of these new provisions.
and the pavement.
And the pavement. Well, yeah, but this could be on non-paved area too. What would happen if we allowed some of the snow storage on parking? Required parking.
In the year and a half that I've been here, and I will say in my limited experience, but in talking with my staff that has been with the municipality for 17 years plus, is for a lot of the developments, whether commercial or residential, minimum parking for most developments is just that, it's minimum parking. And we have had, I know this last winter is a really poor example, but even previous to that, there isn't enough space for parking for a lot of the newer commercial developments and a lot of the multifamily residential developments, because there's multiple people living in these homes and there's not even enough room in the driveway to provide for, there's enough room to provide for maybe 2 cars and they have 4 cars. So 2 cars in their driveway, 2 cars end up on the street. and then it starts to spread further and further. And I have received, this year alone, a minimum of 40 requests to have different residential streets parked, signed no parking, period, because of complaints from adjacent residences near to some of the newer developments of multifamily residential apartments, condos, of those such, because they feel that they're having problems getting access to their home because of the on-street parking. And we're battling that. And then the commercial developments, depending on, I mean, and that's a difficult thing, is some commercial developments, they choose to overpark, whether it's a Walmart or a Sam's, they provide, it's in their regulations to overpark and provide excess parking.
Well, we are changing that.
I know, which is
I-
nice. But for some of the other uses, I'm gonna say, and there's specific ones, there's specific locations that when they store their snow permanently, I mean, if it's a temporary storage of snow that they have to pile
Yeah,
it and
and
then move
this
it and
doesn't
haul
work.
it, that's
Okay.
where we're not concerned with, and we even have
Thank
it,
you.
but when it's the entire time.
Okay. The other reason, Jim, is because we significantly reduced parking requirements in virtually all the uses, and there is allowance for temporary snow storage, even in required parking for certain time periods. So, Jim, and then I want to hear Jerry.
When we looked at the reduction, they are not in all the areas. They're about a third of the areas they reduced the parking. We did that study. I don't have it with me today. I can bring it back. But they did not reduce it in all the areas, in spite of what they said.
Okay.
And commercially, and specifically, if the customers can't get in the door, they're gonna haul snow.
Which is why I thought go from 10 to 5% of
But you're making the
repair.
parking lots 5% bigger,
Okay.
which is a very significant cost.
Like I said, everybody's going to be upset. Jerry?
Tom can speak to the areas that we reduced parking in, but for this is for new development, and we did reduce parking requirements pretty significantly. And the percentages, if you come up from a practical point of view, they're going to store that on their property anyway for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
And that the percentages you put on there are probably, we'll work with those. Probably needs to be a provision in there that they, be removed within 72 or some amount of hours if it's a temporary thing.
The other thing we did is we put limits on the maximum size of parking lots. You can't have the super big parking lots anymore. Okay, well, I'm not hearing anything from committee. My guess is this will be debated at the assembly
Yeah,
level.
and as you know,
All
I
right.
still have issues with parking.
I'd like to just
Go ahead, Tom.
mention that the minimum parking requirements in the rewrite are very calibrated to the actual observed minimum demand.
I remember
by
you put a
use.
lot of time.
So the
Going out at midnight with your little,
yeah. So the language in red in the right column is extremely important.
wait a
It
minute,
is
where are you, Tom?
on page 25 of the issue response. That's a quote. The required parking spaces need to be available for parking. They can't be equipment storage, they can't be long-term storage.
Okay.
The effect we've highlighted in bold text at the bottom.
Okay.
But just as an example, if you do have a snow winter and there's no place for the snow to go,
We're not going to use the parking. We agreed. We agreed with you. He's not happy, but we agreed with you. So, I hear you, but,
we think it protects all parties, including the property owner and the neighbors
Okay.
and the city, street maintenance.
got it, we're with you.
Okay.
All right, moving on. Harriet?
Can you say exactly what's happening on page 26 on the recommendations as a result of that?
The recommendations, number 1, we are saying 10% for multifamily, 5% for commercial. On the parking, we are saying don't allow it in the required parking.
So number 2, you agree with number 2, which says do not allow it in required parking.
One thing that occurs now today when an applicant comes in and they have a site plan is that they are actually being reviewed for snow storage today. They are told by our drainage reviewer, our water quality reviewer, and traffic separately, how are you going to take care of the snow? Show us. So they require a note on the plan or some documentation that it's going to be hauled. If they don't have that documentation, the applicant today is already required, okay, you're going to show us snow storage on the site because you're going to need it. So it's already happening today. Now, in the required parking, sometimes what they require, and I think that the traffic engineer can explain this better than I can, but typically what they require, if they are going to haul the snow and they don't show the snow storage, basically it needs to be hauled within a certain time period, typically 48 to 72 hours. But if it's a tight site, and for example, they are just providing the minimum parking, even today they're required to document the haul within like 24 hours. So what we're proposing here in 2 is to provide some information to applicants, all parties, that this is the practice, that on your required parking, the municipality may request maximum time that for...
Well, the code has a maximum time written in it.
It does?
I read it. 45 hours. 45, wait a minute. Let me find the section. I'm sorry.
Operational standards.
What page are we on? 28?
29? You know, it's probably in there at one point. And I think that eventually the committee, I guess there was objection to naming a specific amount of hours because if we name a specific amount of hours in code and we have a big snowfall and you can't make it within 72 hours, the question was, now I'm breaking the law? So we took it out.
Okay, I'm sorry.
All we're asking for now is some kind of notation in code is that the municipality has this practice of doing what they're already doing today, which is asking applicants to show they'll
You know
limit.
what I would appreciate? If you could send me by email a reference to where we cover this topic in the current Title 21.
We don't.
So you're basically requiring snow storage on sites without language and code to require you to do that.
Stephanie can speak to it, but that's why I recommended, there be perhaps a time period for temporary storage. That's what they do technically, but...
Okay, but Jerry, that's exactly the issue that
this is why
causing frustration.
I can't speak for the traffic, but my understanding from drainage and water quality is that they understand that the muni can't meet its drainage requirements or its water quality requirements unless they regulate for snow, because the snow is the water. That's why they're doing it.
Tom, the issue for me, and I think for a lot of people, isn't that it's not a good intent. The issue is frustration when people cannot see in code the rationale or authorization for why you guys are doing something.
Well, the rationalization...
Okay, rationalization isn't the right word.
Well,
there should be some empowering language in code for any regulation that you do, I think.
And that's what this section's trying to correct on page 30.
Okay, so...
We're trying to
perfect
shed light on what's
example
going on.
of why you're hearing frustration from the community. You can't do that, folks. You
And
can't.
it's been happening, for years, and I have to go and check with my, how long it's been addressed. It's been
I know. And I acknowledged it, didn't I? I said I knew it happened. Well, and then we just had a perfect example 5 minutes later of it happening. So
This section kind of looks on the face of it like now you're regulating my snow pile. What it's really trying to do is shed light on what's already occurring, what has to occur.
okay, I don't want to beat it over the head. Let's
There
stop.
are certain regulations and requirements when it comes into the ADA compliant parking and the ADA route into the building and requirements of snow clearing within that. And that's within Title 24.
Okay,
And so
Stephanie-
there are other parts of it that have come into play.
I would really urge you, as you go forward, if you see something that's not buttressed by code, present potential code language to, I don't know who your department, Thompson? Rod Thompson or Jerry?
That's why I recommended here there be a time period, that it be allowed for those percentages that you put in there, but that there be a plan to remove it within the 72 hours.
Okay, well, I'm not averse to that. I'm going on I'm venting. Pardon me.
And,
All right.
And if there was language that says plan for removal within 72 or...
Then it would be fine, because that's what traffic's doing, they're looking,
But
they're
the
saying.
plan, but it has to, I mean, it's knowing that the time is not enforceable, the plan to have removal.
Yeah, that's putting the hours, the specific hours in the code can be
Yeah.
a problem.
And I
That's why we-
apologize, I don't know where I read it. Maybe I'm having a flashback to version 2 or 3.
Yeah, I believe it was
How long
in
you been
there.
doing this, Debbie?
Yeah.
Too long.
It was in there at one
I remember us having a discussion about it, and I remember...
Okay,
taking it out.
so we have no objection to that second point. All right?
Just one last item. You asked us to look at lines 21 through 23 on page 29.
Oh, yes.
This is a
I do wanna
clarification
talk
by the
about that.
commission.
Okay, thank you, got it. Commission, you are redefining redevelopment here in the blue language in the middle of page 29. And when I read it, I put question marks in big underline on the side.
You're talking,
You can't, are you saying that an addition or an expansion of a building is not a redevelopment? That's how I read what you did. A new, this is,
on lines 21, 22, 23.
yeah, the blue.
Now, what was your question?
Okay. Wait a minute. Why add additions or expansions? I'm fine with a new development, a redevelopment does not include remodeling, tenant improvements, or alterations. But when you say an addition or an expansion, redevelopment is
Well,
that.
We recently had a situation that involved a very, very small change to a big box. And
So then it wasn't,
what we would agree to some percentage there, okay? What we ran into, this
okay.
thing was,
All right, hold on that. So when you do, what triggers now it to be considered?
Well, any expansion or addition would be reviewed on its merit. This particular case is for one particular property. And Mr. Metz is here, so he can speak to it. We have, I think, other ways to address his desire to potentially expand that existing facility. And this particular section was not the right place to do that.
if we take, say take Fred Byers on Northern Lights is redoing the entrance.
Yeah?
And my concern would be that a change of redoing an entrance
So you want more definition on what addition?
should not trigger the change that this is now a new development, and so it would be required.
Okay, could I ask you to do something? Could
All
you?
right, give me one homework.
I'm going to give you another homework. Could you bring back a sentence that explains, there has to be some limit, an addition or an alteration, that's too big an exemption.
If we already have this in place, the commission's wrestled with this already. What percentage on these big boxes would
Okay, so
come
what,
back before them? And we, on minor amendments and changes to those boxes, we approve them administratively. So we make a judgment call on what, and it's a very minor addition. But if you have a major interchange that changes parking and circulation, we would take it back. We would administratively look at it first. We would then see how significant of an impact it is. If it's still a little bit more than a minor, we'd take it to the commission for a non-public hearing amendment. Or if it were major, we would take it back to the commission as an amendment.
Yeah, but the problem is, taking it to the commission is 45 days and like $10,000 for a judgment call. I agree with Mrs. Osiander when she said that there's got to be some limit, and I'd be willing to try to come up with
okay,
language.
Jerry, that language in the middle of 29, could you look at that? This seems like it adds an exemption where you don't need snow storage if you put an addition on a building. And I thought that was too much. I can agree you don't have to do, maybe if you just do a tenant improvement or a minor alteration to an entrance, but this is exemptions for snow
I
storage.
don't think it's the right location.
Well, I don't think it makes sense.
if the addition produces a new parking lot.
Yeah. Why exclude it? I mean, I can exclude it, see it, you could exclude it if it's little tiny, but if it's of any size that requires new parking.
It does, I mean, it's,
So that needs to be worked on, and I'm looking to somebody to work it.
okay.
Can you work it,
Work with
staff?
Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you. Well, you might not need to work with Mr. Ferguson if you've got an existing definition.
All right.
But I'm just asking, you need some clarification. Okay. Anything else here, Tom?
I don't.
Courtney? This is one that I asked you to go back to what we did with Title 23.
I worked on this.
And you worked on that, Erica? And you basically, as I read your comment, said that it wasn't helpful because there wasn't definition of multiple developments.
So what you did in Title 23 was exempted 30 to 100 units from providing more than one access. And you said when you're figuring out whether you have 30 to 100 units, you're not supposed to aggregate multiple developments. And again, it is not clear. I went back and listened to your adopting, and Mr. Wheeler said, well, we're not sure how to interpret this, and it's been a little confusing. But above 100 units, so that action would imply that 101 units or above
Okay, well, I
would
understand.
require only 2, and I'm more concerned about that.
I understand that, and I'm sympathetic to that, because there should be some threshold where you would need more. And so I came up with some, if I can find it. I did have wording. Hold on a second. What page are we on in the red blue?
Page 40.
Thank you. Okay, here's my suggestion. For this, lines 27 through 33, that there be, that we go with P and Z, but we add the words, unless the decision-making body determines otherwise. And I don't know how else to do it. It would be input from the traffic engineer and the fire department, I assume. But our concern was, when we were dealing with Title 23, that there seemed to be a blanket assumption on the requirement for the number of entrances and exits, regardless of the topography and the conditions. Jennifer, you want to chime in on it?
No.
Since you were very involved with this.
And I'll just note that there's topography, natural conditions, and configuration of existing developments are in here as ways that there can be administrative exemption or variance from this standard.
Well, when we dealt with this before, our understanding in Title 23 is the language basically would preclude, I thought the language would preclude development up Eklutna, up Eagle River Valley, up any narrow...
Golden View.
Golden View, yeah. So the
Most of the
Assembly,
hillside.
the Assembly was very frustrated with this. And that's why we crafted that language. And we referred on multiple attorneys for input. And so I know Wheeler was frustrated with it. But if you can't blanket say things, was our concern.
If we were to craft more nuanced language that, I mean, I understand there's one way into Girdwood, there's one way into, Eagle River Valley and that sort of thing. But when you have developments coming off of some of those one-way places where there are opportunities for connections, suddenly you've exempted those connections to be made even though there are opportunities. And so if we were to craft more nuanced language and recognizing that we're not talking about saying you can't build up Eagle River Valley anymore, or you can't build in Girdwood, because that's not what we're trying to do in the slightest.
I think she's correct. She's trying to address the situation of large developments that really try to create multiple access into the development, 100 or more units, so you don't necessarily burden any particular street with unnecessary traffic. But we do have those situations where we do only have one means of ingress, egress to a lot of different areas. So the intent was for traffic circulation and distribution to have appropriate distribution, not necessarily impact one particular street. For 100 lots or more, 4 streets are probably appropriate.
Okay, I think in particular, the assembly representatives from Eagle River, Chuyak, and the Hillside are very sensitive to this because it's been really problematic. So I'd be happy to look at the language, but to have a blanket 4 connections isn't going to cut it. Jennifer?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What was the second one here, Tom? Change the language from shall to should?
So on page
Or Erica?
41 of the
I'm looking at it.
blue red line version, this says when there's a required vehicular connection that can't be made for topography or existing development, that a pedestrian connection instead shall be provided, and this is supported by competent policies talking about increasing pedestrian connections and it notes to the extent reasonably feasible.
I mean, I find it conflicting to have shall, you want to bring shall back, right? With extent of reasonably feasible, because
Should.
it should be should. That's really, I mean, a language issue there is
If I
my.
might explain, I'm sorry.
Hold on, Tom. Harriet?
If you're cutting down the number of streets that a development has access to, then you're forcing people to get in their cars to drive to the next neighborhood. If you don't allow pedestrian access, when you're reducing the number of street access, then you're forcing people into their cars, and you're forcing additional traffic where there doesn't need to be any if you don't allow a very small pedestrian.
And that's not the issue. I agree with you. I mean, I think I do more walking around here than most do.
Yes, you do.
But,
You would do more walking the whole body combined, I think.
but that being said, I just find it you want to go shall, and then you're saying to the extent reasonably feasible. It's just a linguistic problem I have.
It's, if I can,
Go ahead,
I
Tom.
can respond to that.
Go ahead.
Easy linguistic solution?
No, could I let Tom has the floor, please?
Chapter 14 has your linguistic solution. Shall is a mandatory term, so should is a permissive term. Should is
Yeah, and
worthless.
I understand that, but I'm just.
It's an intent statement.
We could clarify because here we have to the extent reasonably feasible. In other places, we talk about topography, natural features, configuration. If we were more specific
That
about
would be fine.
That would take care of it.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Moving on.
7.15, reducing sidewalk requirements.
I would have appreciated if we could wait till the chairman of P&Z was here on Saturday.
Okay, why don't we, you didn't really have much on landscaping, and Schoenthal has been here for a long time, waiting. Is there anything in the blue red line version on landscaping that you think is wrong, Tom? Oh, go ahead. I was going to ask Terry and then Tom, but Tom?
Our planner on the landscaping section is actually at his desk working right now. He's the one that's reviewing landscaping and identifying concerns we have in it. We're also waiting for a committee of ASLA members to provide written comments, and we've given them, we told them they must have it in, yesterday, and we're anticipating those comments.
So you want landscaping to wait till our next meeting?
That would be my preference, actually.
Is that what you just said, Tom?
That's what I.
Okay. All right, next meeting, landscaping. Well, what can we do while we're waiting for Connie?
Where's landscaping, Madam Chair? I'm sorry.
There really isn't in here. The reason I brought up landscaping is because Mr. Schoenthal is a contributing author for the landscaping, and he's shown up for the last 3 meetings waiting to talk about it.
Well, it isn't, I haven't, it's not just about that, I have a real strong interest in some of these other components.
Okay, all right. So we'll deal with landscaping next time, okay? There's nothing in here about it yet, but remember, this is only part 1 of 7. We're going to see another issue response on 7 coming. Okay, I'm turning.
2 parts, not 7 parts.
Did I say 7 parts?
Part 1 of 7, meaning part 1 of chapter 7. I
part
know, I just
1,
wanted to
okay.
clarify, there's only going to be 2 parts.
No, please, no, that's not true.
Housekeeping deal.
Go ahead, Jim.
Can we move this meeting to the training room where there would be more tables for the rest of us trying to balance 27 pages? I look at Mr. Potter trying to read off the floor. I've had a major collapse over here. I mean, because of the nature of this,
Okay, Jerry's going to look into it. If we can we post it on the
Yes.
webpage?
Yes, we can.
I'm just trying to say,
We'll put up signs.
We only have 1 more day.
Okay. Yes, we'll try.
When do you think we will finish?
I'm not going to go there yet. We're trying our best to hold to the schedule that was printed. And right now, this is scheduled for final vote and everything the end of November. But we have to get through budget, and we have to, I reserve.
I'm talking about these meetings.
All right, the plan is, once we get through all of this, we're going to have a work session, and then we're going to ask assembly members to come up with amendments. And then I've been tasked by our chair and through this committee in vetting the amendments. So if amendments come, we'll say, yes, we like it, no, we don't, modify, etc. So there will be some meetings after we've gone through all once and a work session. But hopefully they'll be very short, maybe only 1 meeting.
We have 1 more meeting in September.
Well, yeah, September's almost over. The calendar's right here, Jim. If we're not done, then I may have to add a meeting. But as you can tell, I'm being pretty aggressive pushing.
I didn't notice, man.
You did? Oh, thank you, Mr. Ferguson. How kind. Okay.
Are we done for the day?
Well, no, we're not done for the day. It's only 11:30. But I'm trying to see what we can do besides sidewalks, because he asked to wait until Connie came back for sidewalks.
On-site pedestrian walkways, is that also?
We talked about that. Well,
That's the next issue, and it's item 7.16 on page 32 of the issue response, and it refers to the blue line version on page 42 of the blue line version. So if you turn to page 32 of the issue response, you'll get to the requirement of on-site walkways.
All right, the concern, I have several concerns with this one. The first one was brought up previously, and you apparently agreed with it. No, is this on the industrial? This isn't here. This is on the straightforward. I'm sorry. Okay. On page 42, the blue line, that's what we're talking about, Tom?
Yes.
All right. I would like to keep lines 19 through 29 and delete the last sentence in 4B1, delete 4B2, delete 4B3, and then I didn't quite understand the intent on 4B4, so I wanted to talk a little bit about it. The issue for me is if you require immediate straight sidewalks to every door. In some cases, you preclude a pathway following around a architectural feature, a geographic feature, a landscaped feature. And though it's quicker, it isn't maybe necessarily best. I also know, maybe it depends on how you define primary, but I know that I've heard from several business owners who don't want the public to come to every door on their building. So those were my principal concerns with it. But let's hear from both staff and P&Z on this one. Who wants to go first? Staff?
The primary entrance is magic language, and it does refer to the customer public entrance.
Well, it says all primary, so I didn't know.
It should be primary entrance.
One primary entrance?
The primary entrance.
Okay, that would help me, because the way I read it, it was every single main entrance or...
Yeah, and I think it would, if you have a...
Okay, Walmart has 2 entrances, so they're both primary. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But other stores don't. They don't want you in one side or another
That's
side.
right. That's not a primary entrance. Yeah, we have the definition in 14 if you would like to read it.
Read it, Erica.
Okay, so the definition of entrance, primary is a principal entry through which people, including customers, residents, or members of the public, enter a building. For any commercial or institutional establishment which serves the visiting public, a primary entrance is open to the public during all regular business hours and directly accesses lobby, reception, retail, or other interior areas designed to receive the public. Fire exits, service doors, vehicle entrances, doors leading directly into a garage or storage space accessory to the use, and employee entrances are not primary entrances. A building or establishment may have more than one primary entrance.
Dick?
To say, for example, like Walmart, they've got 2 primary entrances that needs to be open all business hours.
That's more that if they are open during business hours, that's part of what makes them a primary entrance. It doesn't have a regulatory requirement in the definition for them to be open.
Because no Walmart routinely shuts down about an hour before they close one of the entrances.
I think it would still qualify, but this wouldn't make them keep it open.
Okay, I go to the fire department when I've got a complaint called in by somebody. They went to Walmart and they tried to go out a door and they had it shut down for every hour.
The reason for this language, primary entrance, is because we don't want to or mean to require a walkway to, utility door or whatever.
What if you've got a business whose main entrance is not off the abutting primary street?
Well, it would be a new site development. This isn't retroactive, so it would be a new site development.
What's primary street definition?
Primary street frontage.
The biggest street?
We don't have primary street defined.
Frontage. Let's see what we have for frontage.
Frontage is defined as the edge of something, usually a lot, building, or parking lot that abuts a street.
Okay, my 2 primary objections are, I guess, the shortest distance, if it may not be the most aesthetic, and what the building operator wants for the site. And then the secondary one is to define, I'd say the street that people normally use to access the building is the right street, not just primary street.
May I suggest maybe it's a street that's addressed, the building that's addressed on. For example, you've got B Street backed up by C Street. but access from C Street to the village.
Okay. Does that work? I don't know. I guess that would.
Part of it is pedestrians don't always come in a car, and so you will want access, if it's a primary entrance, you will want access on some weird street if that's where they thought you won't want access.
I've written these points down. I think they could be helpful in clarifying. We probably would want a little more flexibility. There may be cases where, you know, the best way to get to the building is, if you're on foot, may not be necessarily the street it's addressed on, but we can add that, try to clarify. But
What, would you go, Debbie, the language you were going to take and then project, would you go for that?
Well, it helped me that now I know primary entrances and all entrances, but initially I was going to get rid of that saying that had to be the shortest practical distance,
You're on
which
page
is
42, right?
I'm on page 42. I took objection to the P&Z or the delete. I agreed with P&Z on the deletion of that sentence on the shortest distance. Well, my other frustration is about primary street frontage. I don't know what that means. And I don't know about the bus stop thing. I mean, I've got a whole lot of bus stops in my district that people don't have buses, so.
You and me both.
Yeah, so I don't know about that.
the language that on lines 24 through 29, that is the fundamental standard.
Yeah, and
That
I'm
is the
okay
most-
with that
that's the
language.
essential
That language is
requirement.
fine for me. It's just the other part isn't.
The other parts are issue and accessory, issue-specific types of things.
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Harriet.
I think, okay, so you're okay with lines, keeping lines 19 through 29 to the end of the sentence that says that pedestrian
Yes,
facility?
ma'am.
Okay, I think the operative word in the last sentence there is the shortest practical distance.
Well,
I don't know why you wouldn't be able to come up with something that makes sense if you use the word practical.
well, because what is practical for the landscape designer may not be practical for, well, think about all the schools where it just cut it right across the lawn rather than going on the sidewalk. So I think that is too prescriptive to a property owner.
People are going to make pathways where it's most convenient to a front door.
Okay, well, that's just, that's my objection, but you may not object to that, so I don't know. At this point, then, could you try to come up with something? Go ahead.
If the intent is to provide sidewalk access to all primary entrances in case where there are more than one,
Yeah.
then you can say primary entrances. If the intent is just to have one sidewalk entrance to a building where you have more than one primary entrance, then just say a primary entrance.
No, I think if there is a primary entrance the public uses, there should be a way to walk to it. That makes sense to
So
me.
that would be all primary.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. But some of the specifics of this language I'm not okay with.
I'll point out the difficulty to that language, the planning department. If we take this entrance right out here, it's a primary entrance. I don't believe it's connected to anything. I mean,
And it's a problem.
it's,
Right, when you leave this entrance and you walk that way on the supposed sidewalk, it ends in a plot of grass. And the other thing I want to remind you
it's a
all
real
is
life entrance. It's a real life example.
when you leave your car in a parking lot and you walk to the building, we all become pedestrians. And the same pathways that provide access to people walking on the sidewalks also provide access to the pedestrians that we become when we leave our cars in the parking lot.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of ways to not belabor this, but to come to some direction. You look poised, Tom, but hold the phone. Wait. Can we at least reach some of the sub-decisions here? Okay, how about if we agree on the street that's on the address? Is that objection?
Is this on new developments or old ones?
Well, it would be on new developments and redevelopments. So if you are going to, well, we haven't finished chapter 12, so I can't categorically say, but basically what we said in 12 is you have to move towards compliance in an incremental fashion. So it's hard to give you a complete answer.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I'm thinking about when I think of this, is I think of Fred Meyer at Northern Lights and the Seward Highway.
Yeah.
I believe their address is on Northern Lights. I don't think it matters. They have done a great job of adjusting their parking lot. They have created a pedestrian pathway straight out through 3 lanes of parking towards Northern Lights, which allows pedestrians to move in either direction through the parking lot. And I don't know if they did that on their own or if they were required to do it.
It was a requirement.
Well, it works beautifully. It makes that parking lot much more accessible from all angles. And whether it has anything to do with where their address is, I think, completely irrelevant. It's the way the building is oriented to the parking lot and the street. So I don't think assigning the street address.
Wish I could
is
think of an
sensible.
example.
Must not be a problem.
But what you want
No,
to do is
think
use
about-
a pedestrian entrance.
I can't think of the names of streets. Yeah, I know, thank you. What about, it's not the Dakota Commons, it's the other one that Begich got us to build, the little one.
Oh, Glen Square?
Glen Square. Okay,
That has its own street down into it.
but the primary street for the Glen Square development, is that Mountain View Drive?
It would be.
All right, so according to this, all of the buildings in Glen Square would have to have a walkway, each individual one would have to have a walkway that connects the shortest practical distance to Mountain View Drive.
I think if you eliminated the shortest practical distance, it would be more clearly meet our intent that it isn't each individual building rolling its sidewalk. It would be kind of like this case where in this building where you do have an entrance here, but you already have a sidewalk that wraps around the building to the main entrance, and so it'd be sidewalk access around the building or between buildings, and then there would be a sidewalk to the street where you have.
Okay. Well, we lost almost half of our committee for some reason. Harriet, do you want to pursue that point, or?
I'm just waiting.
Well, I'm not sure how we're moving here. What I was going to suggest is we basically give these concerns to staff and see what they can come up with, but that's going to take a little more time, which I don't like to do. So I was hoping we could come to at least some finality on some of this. And with 2 of them gone, I don't think we can do anything. Jim?
I do think that planned developments or multi-building developments need some language to provide.
Okay, and staff is apparently agreeing with you on that.
I mean, I think not only the shopping centers, I'll take the University of Providence. I mean, this thing could get morphed into a real nightmare, so multi-building facilities need some language.
I think we even can we even work on an illustration of how that would work?
Okay.
Yeah.
And on the bus stops, could you do like regular and traditionally used bus stops instead of bus stops that don't exist?
Is a school bus stop a bus stop?
No.
Where are your unused, are they out in the residential areas or are they down on Eagle River?
The only bus that we've got left is the one that goes up and down the Glen Highway. So there are bus stops along the Loop Road, there are bus stops along Birchwood Loop, there are bus stops
Routes that used to exist.
in Regency. Speaking, Eagle River person there. So it's just, it's,
We
yeah.
could limit it by
Could you do something
route
like,
or-
well, no, you don't want to
I don't mean to
specify
say-
route because routes change. But if you could say traditionally used or something. What?
Collectors and arterials, bus stops on collectors and arterials.
We also
Oh, that
have
doesn't help because I've lost all
You
the
know-
bus stops on arterials too.
we have
These are
transit
supposed
support.
to be we're way behind in our bus service, there's just no doubt.
Sure, I don't
But
disagree, but
the point being that
There's no money.
tomorrow, who knows? What'll
I
happen,
do
we
know
might get them
tomorrow
back.
won't do it.
We might get them back in the future. So can there be an exclusion, a process where you just call up the staff and say, look, there's.
Well, right now, the code, the language here says you've got to do it to a bus stop. And so what I was just suggesting to them as they're coming up with language here is to think about making it real.
We really,
I think it'll be starting.
what if we started out with transit-supported development corridors and designated urban centers where we know
All right,
this
check
matters?
with Lance to see if it's anticipated that those will always continue. I mean, let's come up with something. You understand the concern? Thank you. All right. Since they're going to come back to us with this, can we move off this, or do you want to talk about it some more? Okay, do we have any idea how long Connie's going to be, where she went?
I don't think she'll come back.
Oh, she's not coming back today. She had a meeting she had to go to.
I asked that was probably next week, is what I was asking.
I may not be able to accommodate that. I don't know. We'll do a little bit.
I'm sorry if I wasn't clear.
Yeah, I thought she just left the room temporarily. I want to use this half hour, Jim. I'm not gonna, okay.
We could continue on and try to hold the sidewalks to the end.
Okay. Go to neighborhood protection then, Tom?
Sure.
I'm fine with your suggestion.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
It's
where-
7.17, page 36 in the book. I'm fine with what staff is suggesting here. Would there be objection to that? Okay. The next one is 718.
718 is an issue that came in response from a public comment.
Yeah, I read that from
And-
Spenard Chamber. I didn't even know there was a Spenard Chamber of Commerce. I'm
They
out
have
of the
100
loop.
members.
Well, cool.
So, and as well from Tim.
Okay.
And this language here on page 39 is intended to provide the opportunity appropriate to allow an off-site parking facility, shared facility for a use to be across a collector or grader street classifications
Okay.
under certain conditions, including the likes of a institutional master plan or what have you. And the other thing it does for everybody is that it makes the language consistent. You have a consistent rule between the two types of off-site parking.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah,
and
it
so-
makes sense to me, but Harriet, this is your area. Do you have any objection to this?
Objection to?
What's in this document, how staff's providing?
No.
Okay. Tim, this is something you've been involved with. Do you have any comment?
It has been, and we need to be able to accommodate it. And the other thing that, and the example I'll use is UAA's arena.
Yeah.
They had to go for a variance to be able to have additional parking
Okay.
across
Okay.
Providence Drive.
Is this okay, though?
It appears to be.
Okay.
I want to make sure that there's confirmation that sky bridges are okay too.
I didn't even think of that.
That was the oddity that we had there, that you could even have a sky bridge before. I think this language deals with it.
Well, when we were dealing
Across the street.
with the convention center, there was some real concern from staff against sky bridges, I remember.
Let me find out where sky bridges fell out in this code. This was more addressing that at-grade type crossing, the traffic safety issues.
The issue with the arena was that they would have needed a variance in that case, even if they had a climate-controlled sky bridge. The parking was still across the street.
Yeah,
Okay.
And that was the problem.
All right, so we're okay with 718, but we want you to look at what you think about sky bridges.
What happened to them?
Okay, that all right, Harriet?
Yes.
All right.
I'm
Tim?
happy to work with that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Parking facility maintenance.
Right. Jeff Urbanis is here to explain this section, and
No, I thought you were pretty clear here, frankly.
Oh.
But, I don't know, if anybody has any questions on it. This is one that I had asked if we were required to do that, and we got an answer that said only indirectly, but yes, indirectly. Right?
It's the same issue about a tool to compliance under another permit.
Okay. Jim, do you want to weigh in on this one too?
I'm still trying to find 107.
Okay, this is about the requirement to clean your parking lots. And you guys deleted it. And so my question to him is, are we required to do this under the permit? And he's saying that it's the same issue that we just dealt with, but yes, the permit says it, right? Does it?
Yes.
And in that sense, our hands are tied.
Could you possibly send me the appropriate sections of the permit? I'd like to read them.
I believe it's number 1 is the reference.
Number 1, what number
On
1?
the sidebar of the...
Oh, on the brown,
Is that
Jim?
APDS MS4.
Section 2B, 2F.
Okay?
Where's that online?
There's a copy of it, I believe, on the PME webpage, but I'll be happy to email you a copy of the permit as well.
You would do that.
Not a problem at all.
Go ahead.
Should you not include language in here so that if the permit changes, that
Yes,
this
thank you.
changes?
Could
And
we
we
do
have no
that,
problem. I
please?
mean, we're not striding on this. If the permit
Okay.
conditions change
All right.
one way or the other.
So we
that's
do
what we're
want the
gonna enforce.
language, yes. Thank you both.
And
All
just so
right.
that people know that probably don't know that there's already a couple of fairly large commercial retail projects in town that is part of their DPC sign-off originally before the city took it all over, are required to maintain a contract for maintenance of their grid separators and storm drain system.
Interesting, okay. All right.
Maybe I'll let you know which ones those are.
Okay, so we're keeping bottom of page 40 recommendation?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
With the added language.
Yes. On 41, I agree with staff. It's pretty minimal. It's 3 bicycle spots is what we were figuring for a lot of it. It's not very big. 3% of the number of required automobile spaces, so. Any objection to that?
Staff recommendation?
Yeah. Okay. Moving on, exterior lighting, yeah, I mean, okay. I know you're gonna bring something, so you don't have to say.
Well, we wanted to put it out
You
there.
wanted to warn us.
How many
Let
years have
everybody
you been
know where
waiting?
that is, and it's now
Okay.
publicly available information.
Here's my only request. Wait until May.
How about in the middle of a power outage when we can appreciate the lack of streetlights?
Okay, never mind. Okay. All right, we've got to go back to sidewalks, Jim. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We got a half an hour. Okay. Now I lost it.
Page 29 of the issue response,
Thank you, Tom.
41 on the...
and then page 41 of your blue line draft for Title 29.
Thank you very much. Okay. What I was going to propose here is that we go with staff with an exception. And the exception would be to allow the decision-making body to preclude the two-sided sidewalk issue when site conditions warrant or when there is extensive public testimony opposing. And the reason
Closing 2 sidewalks?
yeah, this is one that I just dealt with in my district, Harriet. There's been a long-standing wide sidewalk along the old side, one side of Old Eagle River Road, and there's been drainage problems on that road. There's houses here, there's the road, there's the good sidewalk, then there's a fence and new development on the other side, okay? the water drainage from the street came down and got these old houses in a mess. So we lobbied, we got some state money, and so we're rebuilding that road. The difficulty is on that road is if you put sidewalks on both sides, you wipe out these are houses that have been there for 50 years or not 50, but a long time. And they've got big trees and everything. You wipe out their front yards and you cut down the trees. And they were really concerned about the impact of a lot of heavy use and they'd lose their privacy in front yard. There was a really good sidewalk that was wide on the other side. Public testimony was very strongly for just keeping that wide sidewalk on one side. And so P&Z decided to do that, to only put the sidewalk on one side.
P&Z didn't save me from 100.
Well, I don't, she's got her own problems, but anyway, I would like to allow P&Z and other bodies that hear from the public the ability to be responsive to public concern.
I mean, that's where this came from, is staff was upset with this when we,
I know, I know they were.
You've got the whole community asked to get rid of the sidewalk.
And not all the community.
The arterial requires.
Some of the community didn't.
And,
Okay.
But this is in a more rural part of the community. That might make sense. And I'm okay with that since you have a lot of public input on that.
Okay, yeah. It shouldn't be done lightly.
There are places that I've experienced recently on McInnes between 36th and Tudor where a wide sidewalk was put in on one side and on the other side of the street you have to walk in people's yards. There is no shoulder and no place for pedestrians to walk, and there's a lot of walking.
Well, in general, I think in the appropriate zoning districts, not in the rural zoning districts, it is appropriate to have sidewalks on both sides. So I could go with that, but there needs to be some exemption out. Tim?
Yeah, I just want to further, there's maybe another item that should be put in there in the list of things, that it's not just topography, the trip generation per lot, the design of the subdivision, of where it's appropriate, but also where in the design of that subdivision, like Powder Reserve is going to have, they're going to have a whole alternate trail system as well. So the pedestrians can be accommodated both on the street and through a very intense pedestrian system that's pre-built.
Okay, that makes sense. So,
Debbie, another concern
Go ahead,
is
Cheryl.
the vehicle speed, because it's pretty hard to cross. I mean, downtown, we remodeled one sidewalk on.
No, you're right.
115,
That should
and then the other still has telephone poles.
Yeah.
You're forced out in, and there are a lot of little kids and a lot of baby carriages, strollers.
thank you. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so the other thing is the recommendation to require sidewalks on only one side of local streets and industrial areas, and thank you for that. I think that's a good addition too. That's one of your recommendations there. It's on page 31 of the issue response, issue 7.15.
That would take care of our new power station issue.
Okay.
So
basically, we're going with P&Z, with staff, with the understanding that we want some exception language added for the situations that we discussed. Is there objection?
No.
Okay. All right. The on-site pedestrian, we've talked about somewhat, so that's what I was wondering.
Happy day.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Tom?
Only remaining in 7 are the 3 building design sections and landscaping, and that's what we're...
Okay, so next meeting, we'll also go over those industrial tables, Harriet, so we can look at those.
the allowed uses.
And we'll have an idea.
Hold on a minute.
Johnson Oceander allowed uses.
Yeah, just a second, go ahead.
Next week's packet's delivered at the assembly meeting on Tuesday night.
Yes, please. So you'll be able to get them then, which will be a lot easier. Thank you very much. Anything else? And you'll check into the room location. Okay, thank you. Hey.